Alright guys, welcome back to another episode of The Great Ace Attorney Chronicles. Last episode, we concluded the first part of we concluded the trial that we just did. And this episode, we're gonna be doing investigation again. After we found out that the old person himself let escape, you know? But anyways, let's continue. I hope I have memory from the last episode, which I pretty much don't. 2nd November, 3:38 p.m. Shom's Suite. I still can't quite believe what just happened. I know. I inquired with the bailiff after the court session was adjourned, and it seems Mr. Vigil was taken to the hospital to recover. Pepe Hen's Vigil. Right. 10 years ago now, Mr. Vigil attempted to commit suicide by jumping out of the window of the prison's governor's office. But ever since then, he's completely blocked the memory of those events from his mind. Nobody knew his secret, not his family, not even the man himself, but I forced it out in the open. Was it wrong of me to do that? Did I overstep the mark, I wonder? No. We came for the truth. Nothing more, nothing... Bruno! Oh, Iris. You were miles away? Anyway, I have a fresh pot of soothing tea for you. Oh, thank you. You and Susie had an exhausting day so far, haven't you? Oh. Why, thank you, Iris. How thoughtful of you. You happen to know where Mr. Sholmes is. When we came out of the courtroom back into the defendant's antechamber, he disappeared. Oh, no. I don't know. He just suddenly sprang to his feet and left. All he said was, I must leave. Sus? I wonder if he's pursuing the mystery of Inspector Gregson's death. There's more to his death than meets the eye. Well, you know what Hurley's always saying, don't you? There are mysteries in this world that should perhaps never be solved. For the construction of a solution that comes only at the expense of destruction of something else. What does that mean? He knows very well when you have opened someone else's old wounds, you have to open your own too. But he just can't take his own advice and leave well alone. Solving mysteries is too important to him. That's so true. But that's what I like about Hurley, after all. I suppose that's a lot of great detective in some ways. So then, let's have tea, and I'll give you a hand. Oh, do you have time, Iris? Yes, I finished this morning's manuscript at last, with barely a day to spare before the deadline. Oh, I'm so looking forward to it. A brand new story to read in the Bench of Herlock show. It's gonna be a scam, isn't it? I bet it has to do with Gregson. You know, I always hide Hurley's violin in the days before I have a deadline. You do? Or Mr. Sholmes? I'm sure that's very wise, Iris. How sensible of you. Now then, my dear fellows, let's make a plan of action before we continue our investigation. Let's do it. First, we gotta consult with Iris about this morning's trial. So how did it go in court this morning? Well, we still don't know the truth about what really happened. But one thing's increasingly clear. Lord Von Zieks definitely didn't do it. Oh, goody. Yes, that's right. We managed to uncover several new facts as well. Oh, really? And there was another development, too. Kazuma. Yes, it's quite clear now. That Kazuma-sama's not himself. Yeah, I agree. The way he's acting, it's almost as if he's possessed. It's more like obsessed. I know, I mean, at the end of proceedings earlier, he was like a bloodhound the way he was chasing down Mr. Vigil's forgotten past. He's not normally so mercilessly persistent. What's going on in his head, I wonder? I really need to sit down with Cosmo and try to understand what he's going through. Can we understand him? That's the question. If Gregson was really murdered the day before his body was discovered, then Lord Von Zieks has to be innocent, you see? Nani? The day before? Well, that should be easy enough to work out just by examining his corpse, surely? Yes, you would expect so, but curiously, no time of death was included in the autopsy report. You know, that's a problem. That is curious. There are still unanswered questions about Lord Von Zieks, though, aren't there? How do you mean? I mean, what was he doing there on Fresno Street that day in the first place? According to the man's testimony, he said he was investigating Inspector Gregson, didn't he? And it turns out that little room was Accident Inspector's secret office. Oh, that sounds like it all has all the makings of a wonderfully devilish plot. But then, why was the noticeable there covered in all those particular papers? Papers about cases with a link to the Reaper. I'm starting to get a bad feeling about all this. Oh dear, that sounds like more of something horribly devilish. Must I start looking into Inspector Gregson's movements of late? Gregson's movement. I never imagined I might have been investigating the Inspector's movements. Well, according to the entry in his diary, he was carrying out an incognito investigation of the Red-Headed League the day before his death. Oh, you mean he was doing the same as Hurley? Well, Mr. Sholmes was trying to apply whereas the inspector was supposed to be investigating. I do wish it had been the other way around. Anyway, as it turns out, the inspector who went to investigate the Red-Headed League that day wasn't actually Gregson at all. It was Mr. Vigil, in possession of Gregson's identification. You know what that sounds like to me? Establishing an alibi. I agree. Oh my, yes, you're absolutely right, Iris. But, why would Gregson need an alibi? A fake alibi, indeed. It appeared that the inspector had something to do with the that he wished to keep secret. I don't believe it. I always thought he was just a harmless lover of fish and chips. But perhaps they were seasoned with something a little more potent than salt and vinegar. I think perhaps we should try to move away from the food analogies. Well, anyway, if Lord Von Zieks felt the need to investigate Gregson... Yes, I agree. We must try to find out what he knows. Vigil, you say? Isn't that the name of the lady who came to visit Hurley yesterday? Yes, Mrs. Vigil. That's right. Perhaps Mr. Sholmes would be help to her to find her missing husband. Only Mr. Sholmes completely passed the buck to us. Actually, didn't you say that Mr. Vigil had been taken to the hospital? Do you know which one? Where? Ah, it's the St. Signers. I'm starting to wonder if all the other hospitals in London have closed down. But that's amazing, Uno. You found the lady's husband already. Well, I suppose I have, by accident. And 10 years ago, while Mr. Vigil was the chief warder at the prison, he was responsible for overseeing the professor's incarceration. No. So when the convict escaped, he was held responsible and immediately dismissed. Sometimes I really don't want to grow up. There's more. For 10 years after that, while he was ostensibly working as a peddler, he also had another secret job. He was paid by Gregson to be a stand-in, to impersonate the inspector. To impersonate Gregson? But why? I have absolutely no idea. Ginny was right. I certainly think all adults are up to no good now. I mean, that's pretty obvious, right? Including you. Oh, no excuses there. I haven't paid anyone to impersonate me. That means he has ties with Professor and Inspector Gregson, though. So I do think we ought to pay a visit to Mr. Vigil, don't you? Back to St. Sinners, I guess? Oh, mind the aircon, guys? Well, I think it's clear what we need to do, isn't it? Let's investigate, my dear fellows. Oh, Iris. You're more enthusiastic than usual. Oh, you're coming with us. Anyone has anything to hide? My special whistle shooting iron will soon set them straight. That water pistol? Stuff out of piping out extra special blend of mine. Then I'm quite sure it'll be very effective. I'd better be careful not to hide anything. Well, it feels a little strange that Mr. Sholmes is nowhere to be seen, but still. Let's go and see what we can find out. Yes, there we go. Alright, where do we go? Ooh, Lord Chief Justice's office. Don't mind if I do. Kazuma. No arguments, Prosecutor Sogi. You will continue with the trial exactly as I instructed. Is that clear? Perfectly. It's Kazuma-sama. I find Lord Strongheart by the sound of it. He never did know when to back down. On your way now, Asogi. My lord? Kazuma. Damn, he just walked away. He left without saying a word. Yes, what are you doing in here? Well, I was just hoping to ask you for a few questions if you wouldn't mind. I wanted on Zeke's trial concluded today. But Prosecutor Silly unwelcome inquiries are going to make it take longer than necessary. Unwelcome inquiries? As a result, I'm losing even more precious time. Currently 2 hours, 55 minutes, and 41 seconds, 42, 43. You must resolve everything before 3 hours have passed, Mr. Naruhodo. In a miraculous not even 5 minutes? Anyway, I can't let the man's obvious bad mood put me off. Need info. Let's talk to you, a Reaper. Does Prosecutor Sogi believe that Lord Von Zeeks is the Reaper? I wouldn't know. It was 10 years ago in that fateful close trial that Lord Von Zeeks made a name for himself among the judiciary. But the next trial he fought, he lost. It meant the ringleader of the criminal organization was acquitted thanks to all the jurors being under duress. But that's awful. But the man's freedom was short-lived. He lasted just 3 days. Yes, let me see. He died in a rock site in place of his work, I believe. Ah, correct. That was the inauguration of the Reaper of the Bailey. To be fair, it could have just been an unfortunate accident. And people believed Lord Von Zeeks was responsible. He was brought to trial himself, but it was shown to believe it had been an accident. So he must have had a solid alibi then. Nevertheless, the mysterious deaths continued. In total, 16 persons perished in unusual circumstances, ostensibly by the hand of the Reaper. That's a long run of coincidences. Well, the Reaper's true identity may well be revealed by this trial. And the impact that revelation will have on the British public cannot be understated. Is that why it's a closed trial? Ah, yes, precisely. Closed trial. The country hasn't seen a closed trial for 10 years. So the last one was the Professor's trial of Genshin Asogi? Ah, correct. Actually, I heard that originally. You were going to prosecute that trial yourself, Lord Strongheart. Well, Von Zeeks entreated me to relinquish the prosecution to him, and that he might avenge his brother's death. And here we are, 10 years later. With the son of the man Von Zeeks I condemn now, looking to avenge his father's death in the same way. They do say that what goes around comes around. However, it would seem that the new young prosecutor is harboring some ulterior motive as well. Kazuma is? Like my organization to be run smoothly in the exact same manner I prescribe. As with the grind clock in here, I won't tolerate a single cog being out of step with the others. So that's what all these geese are about in here. And if the young man refuses to mesh with the other parts of my great machine, I will be forced to take steps. Nani? What do you mean? Not something you wish to concern yourself. In any case, all your questions will be answered tomorrow. Is that all the info we can get? Now I shall have to ask you to excuse me. As of this moment, I've been delayed from attending my next meeting by precisely 3 hours. Oh my, that is a long time. And I hold you entirely responsible. You know, you miraculously managed to fit everything into not even 5 minutes. If I wonder if you might agree to us, talking with the prosecutor, Sogi. Discussions between the defense and prosecution outside the courtroom are generally frowned upon. However, I will make a new exception in this case. Now go, you can find him in his office. Oh, thank you. Well, let's go see him at once, Mr. Naruhodo. Kazuma's my best friend in the world, but I'm really not at all sure I know how to talk to him at the moment. You just gotta think about what you want to say. Great Waterloo Hotel? Vigil's hospital bed, Fresno Street room. Let's go to the prison. I want to check on Von Zeeks. I wonder how he's doing that we turn around this trial. Lord Von Zeeks is reading, look. He doesn't seem like he wants visitors, does he? But he must have noticed that we're here, surely. What do you Nipponese want? That's no way to greet the lawyer who's trying his hardest to prove your innocence, is it? Well, perhaps not. I apologize. So what can I do for you, Mr. Naruhodo? Lord Von Zeeks is speaking earnestly. Oh, the fog will lift over London for the first time in months tomorrow. This does feel very, very strange. But I must say, I was impressed. Oh, well, thank you? Not by you, by your fellow Nipponese, your prosecutor friend. Oh, I see, yes. I thought it was praising me. It's sardonic, don't you think? For a man such as me, so loading up the Nipponese to be entirely at the mercy of the two of you. I suppose it's retribution for having played the part of the Reaper all these years. Played the part? Well, the Reaper's identity. You once told me that you gladly allowed people to believe you were the Reaper because it helped reduce the amount of serious crime that took place in London. If keeping quiet and playing the hard part benefits the cause, a cause I myself am committed to pursuing, then why would I choose to say anything? But the henchman of the criminal killed by the Reaper attacked you only the other day. And that was just the most recent of many attempts on your life, wasn't it? Someone's clearly profiting from your science, but all this, someone is using you. Believe me, ever since the Reapers first appeared, I've been doing utmost to expose him, or rather, expose the organization. Huh. a whole organization? It's an inconceivable that all those accidents were orchestrated by one man. No, the Reaper always have to have very accurate info about the accused in each case. Which can only mean that somebody at Scotland Yard is involved. Someone at... You can't mean a mole. It's taken me many years, but I finally identified the central figure in this Reaper organization. Tobias Gregson. What? Gregson? No. No! Gregson? The Reaper? Gregson's secret. So, the reason you were investigating Inspector Gregson is because you intended to expose him as the Reaper? As I said, the Reaper of the Bailey is no single person. It's a highly secret organization that closest ties to Scotland Yard. But there's no doubt that Gregson was a key member of that organization. I don't believe it. Are you saying that that he was behind all those awful criminals meeting their... I refuse to believe that Gregson did it. Gregson didn't do the dirty work himself. Oh. He was a tactician. His job was to covertly investigate the marks and plot their assassinations. In order to do that without arousing suspicion, he regularly needed a firm alibi. Vigil. Which is where Mr. Vigil came in, posing as the inspector. Vigil knows nothing of the Reaper, but the room he rents on Fresno Street was almost certainly the headquarters of the operation. Greg said Wood met the assassin there for briefings. So we don't actually know who carried out the killings then. Actually, I do have a name. Nani? Well, if you can name the man, you have the true identity of the Reaper already then. Or, if I can name the no way, there's no way it's the wife. Oh. She's a young woman by the name of Asa Shin. Huh? Wait, what? Shin? Wait. Miss Asa Shin, true name the terrifying killer I know only too well. Wait, but she's dead though. She's part of the first cases of the first and second game. She came to Japan posing as a visiting student and murdered Dr. John H. Wilson. Then, just when it seemed that diplomatic protection would help her escape Japan and conviction, she was murdered. The mysterious woman was herself murdered in a small summer beach hut. And that woman was actually the Reaper of the Bailey? Wow. There's one thing I need to get straight. She only murdered 2 people currently. Scenario, this perhaps isn't the place to discuss. No, of course not, because Iris is here. Can we not mention it here? The fact that she killed Dr. John H. Wilson. Because Iris doesn't know. It's very likely that the man was her father. Asa Shin. I shall let father know at once. Yes, I agree. Alright, what about Kazuma? Kazuma, isn't it? Kazuma Asogi. You say he's a friend of yours. My best friend. He's the whole reason I got to come to Britain. It was all on his merits. I have nothing but respect for him. Yes, I understand that only the best students are selected for such opportunities. And I had a fine demonstration of how sharp he is in the proceedings earlier today. He missed nothing. In fact, his flawless performance very much reminded me of his father. Genshin Asogi, the professor. It's true that their aristocracy at the time was the root of the numerous grave societal problems. They were abusing their power, playing with the common man as pawns in politics and economics and war. In many ways, Asogi was carving out a canker from the society we British couldn't do ourselves. I see. But that's precisely why it makes no sense. Clint Von Zieks was a noble and outstanding man. He wasn't corrupt. Why did that damn Nipponese have to go and take my brother's life? In spite of having only once saved mine. Saved your life? How did that happen? It was 10 years ago on a foggy night. What was believed to be the professor's final strike, and had sent a wave of panic throughout the capital. So, Clint Von Zieks already been killed at this point then? Genshin and I were walking down some back streets at the late hour. Of course, at that point, I had no idea of the true nature of the man at my side. All of a sudden... Don't make a peep. You're coming with us? We were surrounded. All of our assailants were armed with pistols. Their faces obscured by scarves. Clint was not only from noble heritage, he was a brilliant prosecutor as well. The scum of London hated the sight of him, and they had no sympathy for his younger brother either. I've been targeted several times before already. Yeah. Von Zieks alright. We got him. I could hear them murmuring amongst themselves. I knew they were after me, but that's when I thought the time had come. I let them kill you. Clint will never forgive me. It was a Sogi's voice just whisper in my ear. Bang. After that, I don't remember exactly what happened. The next thing I knew, there was silence all around. Genshin laid on the cobbled street. Blood was seeping from his left hand. He shielded me. And 2 days later, they arrested him, on suspicion of being London's most notorious mass murderer ever, the Professor. How awful for you. Oh, at once I lost the brother I revered, and the foreign friend I held such high regard. I'm so sorry, Lord Von Zieks. Well, that's the end of my miserable tale. I never thought I'd recount it to anyone. Well, thank you for confiding in me. The Professor, Reaper, Inspector Gregson. I just wonder how intimately related they all are. Still can't quite believe that Gregson was essentially the Reaper, giving assassination orders to Giselle Brett. Mr. Naruhodo, let's go inform my father. I'm sure our government will want to hear about this new info. Oh, that means I get to meet your daddy, Susie. Hooray! Yes, alright. Back to Great Waterloo Hotel then. Let's hope Iris doesn't catch on about Dr. John H. Wilson. Alright, next we're going to the Great Waterloo Hotel. I thought yesterday and I think it again. Place is so princely. It's a wild yes, but I have a feeling you'll think the same tomorrow too. My tea has been a finer fragrance than whatever they're serving in the tea room here though, wouldn't you say? Oh, look what we have here. This is an unexpected pleasure. Huh. Father. Ooh, is that your daddy, Susie? How lovely.
Ah, what a charming young lady. And you are. Oh, really? So you're the author of The Adventures of Sherlock Holmes, are you?
That's me, Iris Wilson, at your service, sir. Susie's been such a wonderful friend to me over the last year, you know?
Ah, well, Miss Wilson, I must say you read your work regularly with much interest.
Iris actually lives with Mr. Sholmes, you know, Father.
Oh, is that so? Well, Perhaps that goes some way to explaining that bright look in your eyes.
Hehe. You wouldn't believe she's smiling so airily if you knew just how bright she is, believe me.
Now then, Mr. Young Naruhodo, it was a pleasure seeing you in action earlier. I was an invitee of the symposium. I was allowed to observe it from the gallery after I twisted some arms. And I must say, it was truly exemplary performance.
Oh, well, thank you very much. Although I'm fairly sure you omitted by Cosma on the end there.
No, please. Please don't misunderstand. It was you who impressed me.
Really?
You didn't miss a step against Asogi, and we all know how capable he is. Really, to have matured in such a fine defense lord in less than a year is quite extraordinary.
It's very kind of you to say so. Really nice to hear.
Why, Soundcore today confirmed what I've been hoping for. The favor I mentioned yesterday, Mr. Naruhodo. I trust you haven't forgotten?
Oh, no, you did mention something, didn't you? But first, we have something to report, Farder.
Something to report? Of course. Shall we take tea while we discuss matters further?
I wonder where Judge Jijoka's got to. Alright, let's talk to you about the Reaper. Father, do you know about the so-called Reaper of the Bailey?
I've heard rumors. Some members of the judiciary explained it all to me yesterday. Of course, when I was a visiting student here in London, the Reaper has yet to emerge.
Right, he didn't appear until after the case when the visiting students had already returned home.
Lord Von Zeeks, who was in your dock yet today? That was Barak, the younger brother of Clint Von Zeeks, I believe.
That's right, and he's known throughout London as the Reaper, as you heard. But the truth is, it wasn't him behind all those mysterious deaths, it was somebody else.
I see. So what you're saying is, there's been a professional killer at work here?
Exactly. Someone by the name of Asunder, in fact.
I beg your pardon? Did you say Asunder? You mean that Giselle Brett woman who was responsible for killing my great friend?
Oh no, a friend of yours was killed.
Don't say the name. Don't fucking say the name.
Professor Mikotori, perhaps we shouldn't discuss this right now. Because the friend the professor's talking about is Dr. John H. Wilson. It's not something we want Iris to find out about. Not like this anyway. I just remembered something. Biscuits. This hotel has the most delicious looking biscuits. You're not good at stalling, so
that was rather out of the blue.
Wink, wink. She's doing this deliberately. Think I'll go and see if I could purchase some. Wonder, would you like to come too, Iris? Oh yes. You just try to leave me behind.
So that young girl is called Iris Wilson, is she?
Yes, that's right.
And she's the author of all those adventure stories I've shared in the great Detective Sholmes? But the name of the credit author isn't Iris, isn't it? It's Dr. John H. Wilson.
Yes, I know. It's the name of her father, you see.
Her father? Dr. John H. Wilson. I was deeply indebted to the man and all the kindness he showed me during the time in London. I thought I was keen on reciprocate and invite him to the Imperial University 4 years ago.
He was murdered last year by Giselle Brett. Why? Why would the hand of the Reaper stretch all the way out to Japan? Iris knows nothing about that case, but it seems very likely that the victim, Dr. Wilson, was her father.
Well, I can't say that we ever spoke about his family, so I don't know if he had a daughter or not. But I think we can say so with some certainty that he was never the great detective's partner.
So, could have been another Dr. Wilson, you think? That's copium, but...
Well, John and Wilson are both common names after all. Still, it's probably best not to mention this to the young lady until we can be sure.
That's what we thought, yes? We're back. The cinnamon biscuits. Oh, they smell delicious, Iris. We were not talking about a certain person. I think cinnamon will go well with the tea they serve here. Don't you think, Susie? Yes. I'm sure you're right, Iris. Okay, we got the stuff out of the way. Okay, Judge Joku. Haven't seen Judge Joku for a while, haven't you?
Guilty! Oh,
No! But that guilty is still ringing in my ears. You're guilty.
No, now that you mention it, I haven't seen him since this morning either. I suppose since the symposium's opening was postponed, he'll have to go and explore the great exhibition.
That reminds me of something you mentioned yesterday. But Judge Joku having in once in the dock himself?
Ah, yes. It was all tied up in that accursed trial.
The closed trial of Cosmo's father.
Sacer was trying to mitigate Genshin's guilt, so he took to the stand to testify. But he got a little carried away and actually managed to break the witness stand.
Oh my.
He also said some contemptuous words about the British Empire for which he was charged.
Oh dear. Although it's really easy to imagine him doing that.
Oh, well, it was alright. It was all alright in the end. He was acquitted and we returned home to Japan together.
Thank goodness.
Ah, yes, talking of Seishiro. I have a copy of the photograph we all took together here yesterday, Faye, please.
Oh, what a lovely picture. Singer seems to shout, "We've arrived in Britain." Huh? Why is it entered the court record?
None of us had any idea what was coming to when we took that, did we?
No, that's so true. The favor. So, you mentioned a favor that you'd like to ask me.
Well, this fateful trial you're fighting, one way or another, will be over before long. And when it is, I'd like you to accompany me back to Japan.
You want me to do... Nani? Father, what's the meaning of this?
Now, Susato, you should understand. You've seen how our courts work firsthand. Japan's judicial system in its infancy, especially when it comes to defense.
Oh, you mean...
Supreme Court of Judiciary is desperate need of a good defense lawyer. As soon as possible. It's really quite urgently, in fact.
But I'm not even in London a year yet.
I've read all of Susato's reports. I'm well aware of your extraordinary talents. I haven't seen you in action with all my own eyes earlier today, there's no question. You, Mr. Naruhodo, are precisely the man of our country needs, the future.
So, you be leaving then, Luno? Pepe hint. But then, what am I supposed to do, Father?
You came here to serve as Sogi's judicial assistant.
Oh yes, she's supposed to be Cosmo's assistant.
Our government is still in the process of deciding how to best deal with this situation, though. You always chosen your own path, Susato, and I trust your judgment in this matter also.
But Father...
Please, the pair of you, don't look so downcast. It's merely a suggestion you understand, I hope. If I'm honest, I won't force you. But all I ask you is that you consider it and come to a decision by the time this trial concludes.
Yes, alright. You won't leave, will you, Uno? Our time in Britain's gonna be coming to an end soon? Damn. Japan needs more defense lawyers, Pepe hens. It's like the rise... We need more Phoenix Wrights in the world. The thought hadn't even crossed my mind. Up until now, I've been just trying to do what I believe to be Cosmo's will. But it turns out he's still alive, so... Where does that leave me? Well, now.
Well, if you excuse me now. I need to telegram government ministers and the Japanese police and with this info about Asunder.
Of course, Father. Thank you.
I look forward to the next month's installment, Miss Wilson.
Oh, good, and please do come to Baker Street sometime, won't you? We'd love to entertain you.
I would be delighted. The best of luck for tomorrow, Mr. Naruhodo. And give my suggestion to your full consideration, won't you?
Yes, I will. Going back home? You know, Kazuma-sama has always meant a great deal to my father. I'm sure he loved the chance to meet with him and talk to him about all of this. Yes, no doubt. ... Asunder. Of course, it's so obvious.
How can I neglect to consider possibility before now? Where the hell did you come from? Mr. Sholmes?
Really? Where have you been?
Why, I joined you all for tea, of course. What extraordinary question.
I didn't notice you at all.
No matter anyway, the more pressing concerns, Mr. Naruhodo.
Oh, yes?
I must dispatch a telegram to your country at once. It's a matter of urgency.
To Japan, you mean?
Tell me whom I can entrust the task quickly now. Who?
Well... My father has just now left to send a telegram to the Imperial Police Bureau of Japan himself.
I see. Well, he's looked reliable enough to be for a bearded fellow.
I don't think what father sports could be considered a beard, Mr. Sholmes.
Ah, there's not a moment to lose. Kindly ask your trusted unsaving father to see this sent.
I will, but what is it?
No questions all this time, if you please, Mrs. Sato. All we can do is pray that for once, my deduction is airy.
Doesn't that imply that your deductions are normally correct, Mr. Sholmes?
It's an exact... Now then, you just cut me off. You may be surprised to learn that I am a very busy man. I certainly have no time to hide behind settees and eavesdrop on other people's conversations.
So that's what joining us for tea meant.
I leave the sending of this to your hands then, my dear fellows.
Wait a minute, Mr. Sholmes. He just sort of ran off, didn't he? At quite a pace. And left an unpaid bill for his tea behind, too. Well, must catch up with father at the telegraph office at once. Aranas calls the cab straight away. And there was me thinking everyone would be clamoring to pay Mr. Sholmes' bill. Alright. What else can we do? What is next? I think we're ready to talk to Mr. Vigil, aren't we? Alright. Where's Mr. Vigil? It's the ward where Mr. Vigil was apparently. To be frank, I'm a little worried about seeing him again. The lawyer. Hello again. Are you feeling better now, Mr. Vigil? Yes, thank you. Somewhat better. I'm so sorry to have caused you to. I mean, it was because of me. If I'd exposed your secret and forced you to remember things you obviously tried to forget. The prosecutor was here until a few moments ago, too. You just missed him. Oh, Cosmo beat us to it. He said much the same as you. He was very apologetic. But the truth is, I brought this all upon myself. Please, don't think of it like that. Keeping it from Evie, my wife. All these years, I've carried such a sense of guilt. But that's not the worst of it. Over time, I obviously came to deceive myself as well. You mean about your dismissal? Looking back now, I'm beginning to think that perhaps Inspector Gregson didn't stumble across me by accident at all. I mean, he compensated me so generously for acting as a stand-in. He was clearly concerned for my well-being and doing what he could to help. So perhaps Gregson knew exactly what had become of Mr. Vigil all along then. I'm sure this is just desserts for 10 years of lies and deception, but it wasn't me that helped the professor escape 10 years ago. It wasn't me. I swear it's true. Oh, Mr. Vigil. I'm sure you'd rather not dredge up even more from your past at this time, but if possible, can you tell us exactly what really happened? I need to get this all off my chest. I just want someone to tell me what I should have done. Do we even explore the place? No, it's got my eye before, actually. I suppose it's some sort of slogan for the ward, a cheerful welcome message, perhaps. Let's see, pray with good cheer, leave with good cheer. Well, look at that, you were spot on, Mr. Sato. It is in full of cheer. I wonder how many discharged patients must pay their medical bills with good cheer, though. Never a good idea to mention medical bills. Once I had a very painful injection when I felt ill with a cold. I felt awful already, so why did I have to suffer the sting of injection as well as the bill? I yelled at the doctor. Oh dear, what terrible treatment. These must be the patient's treatment notes. Let's see. Tendency to jump from windows. Remember to place cushion at the base of wall outside. Aren't we a story up from the ground here? Oh dear, poor Mr. Vigil. I can't help feeling that there's a better solution to the problem than a cushion, though. Finding something you lost isn't always a happy experience, it turns out. Pursuing the truth can be a very dark business sometimes, can it? Yes, I'm afraid it can. These are all sorts of medicines in the cabinet. Look. Not sure it's safe leaving them in reach of everyone like this. Yes, you're right. I can imagine if you were peckish, you might try some of the pills. Well, at least there seems to be a little lock to secure the cabinet doors. I don't imagine I would stop you if you're hungry. I worry that you break the lock. Hunger doesn't turn me into a criminal, you know, Mrs. Sato. Well, kinda. What else is here? Patient treatment notes. What do these say, I wonder? Endlessly obliging. Suppose that's referring to the patient in this bed. I would think so, and until Mr. Vigil's a little more stable. It's probably just as well that he has a kindly person in the neighboring bed. The endless sleep part is a little worrying though, isn't it? I mean, what if Mr. Vigil suddenly declared he'd like to take a trip out of the window? Wouldn't this endlessly obliging patient simply open it for him to say, "Be my guest"? Let's check with the doctor later. There are lots of bottles in a cabinet there, aren't there? Do you think it's safe to keep them there? If you were a patient here, I feel sure you'd take some medicine by mistake when you were half asleep. That is a worry, but at least the cabinet has a lock even if it is only a flimsy looking one. Oh, no doubt you managed to unlock that somehow while you were half asleep as well. There are limits even to what I can do when I'm half asleep, you know, Mrs. Sato. Ah, look, a pair of crutches. Before we came to Britain, I hadn't realized they were used here as well. I imagine they were imported to Japan from Great Britain in the first place. So no one in Japan broke a leg before their arrival? Anyway, the sight of these things doesn't bring back good memories for me. Oh dear, did you injure yourself once I need to use some? When I was little, I thought they looked fun, so I borrowed a pair to play with.
but then I slipped and sprained my ankle. Wow. I see. They contain powerful magic. Those wooden stats, the power to heal and the power to harm. I think a certain cheeky little boy managed to cause the harm all by himself. Alright, let's converse with you, Mr. Vigil. Gregson's request. Inspector Gregson was obviously engaged in a special operation of some sort. He was investigating something that even Scotland Yard could know about. Details of the Reaper's marks, yes. It was when he had to carry those investigations. I would have taken his identification, impersonate him. You pretend to be inspector and carry out investigations on his behalf? Oh, no, never. A common street peddler couldn't possibly carry out a proper police investigation. All I would do is just go to the specified location and make a little hoo-ha. Just something to leave an impression, so everyone there wouldn't think a detective called Gregson was here. So, that's what you were doing on the day prior to the accident? Yes, he asked me to make an appearance at the park on live stream for the Lime-Headed League event. So as usual, I flashed the inspector's identification around and was very vocal about my presence. But then you were taken prisoner by those red-headed fraudsters. Yes. So, you would always make a point of showing Gregson's identification and generally being loud? That's what the inspector asked me to do, yes. That's one way of becoming a legendary detective, I suppose. Not a good one, though. And as you know, I suffered this bruising around my neck at their hands. But the following day, they kept their word and released me. Without returning the inspector's identification to you, however. We had arranged to meet in Fresno Street at 5 the day I could report back to the inspector. But they agreed that that's when I heard the gunshot. Prison escape. It was at midnight at 17th of June 10 years ago. It was the time scheduled for the execution. But the professor's execution never actually took place, did it? Or rather, the execution itself must have been used to effect a plan of escape. I hardly dare to imagine what a chilling plan it was. Barclay was renowned for knowing being a high-security prison in the country. Everything that went in or out of the place was searched multiple times. But there was one notable exception, or rather, one notable loophole. Something that was never questioned. I have a feeling. I know what that loophole was now. The coffins into which the bodies of the executed convicts were placed, correct? Yes. Once the coroner had confirmed the death of the condemned victim, the body was taken in its coffin for immediate burial at Lowgate Cemetery just behind the prison. The chief warder first had to sign the necessary papers. After that, no member of staff was permitted to touch the coffin containing the body again. When the executions took place, only executioners and the coroner were permitted inside the chamber. I would wait in the adjacent room for word that the condemned victim was dead. On that occasion, once I had that confirmation, I went into the mortuary to find a lone coffin as usual. Procedure was that I would sign the paperwork to having checked the coffin and then nail it shut. But for some reason that day, the coffin was already nailed shut. No. I didn't think of anything at the time. I assumed that my deputy must have checked the coffin and nailed it shut before I arrived. So you mean, the coffin contained... Yes, I can only imagine that Asogi, having escaped his execution somehow, was alive inside the coffin. The coffin was then taken out through the main gates and deposited in Lowgate Cemetery. Assuming there wouldn't have been enough air inside to breathe for long. Well, so in the early hours following the burial, somebody dug up the coffin to set Genshin free. In the end, he was fatally shot in the graveyard anyway. What on earth really happened in Lowgate Cemetery that night, I wonder? I'm afraid I really don't know. All I can say with certainty are two things. Asogi couldn't possibly have escaped that way without help from somebody working in the prison.
And that somebody was not me. Convict Kosogi. Obviously, you knew the man then. The professor, I mean. Genshin Asogi. Yes, I remember. Him well, in fact. Would you mind telling us what you know? Well, having been considered to death as he was, any contact I had with the man was short, obviously. After that trial, which was carried out by closed doors, attended to be only by elite members of the judiciary, they called for his execution to be carried out at the earliest possible opportunity. The outcome of the trial was set from the beginning, wasn't it? It was a time of delicate diplomacy when Britain and Japan were in the process of signing an important treaty. That meant that this potentially destabilizing case had to be dealt with swiftly and discreetly. The man had less than a week in total. I was the chief warder. I oversaw his short stay in the cells until his final hour. I remember being struck deeply by his noble character and incredible resilience. What do you mean exactly? He was a killer of many men, but he was always quiet and polite. He was a gentleman and a man of intellect. In fact, I couldn't bring myself to believe what he'd done, so I asked him one day. Those 5 members of the aristocracy whose lives were taken, were you really responsible? I'm guilty of forgivable crime of ending another human's life, yes. The following day, the closed trial that took place, and the verdict was no surprise. Guilty. That night when Willie was brought back to his cell, I saw something unusual. Something unusual? What? The last will and testament of Genshin and Asogi. Will? Asogi's will? As I said, it was on the night before following this trial. After he been found guilty, I was doing rounds of the cells, and when I looked into Asogi's, I noticed that he seemed to have a sheet of paper in his hand. Ah, his last will and testament then, presumably. As soon as he noticed me, he heard he'd shove it behind his back. But why did you find it so unusual? Isn't it normal for a man to pen a will when he knows his death is nigh? Yes, that's true, but there were special conditions to Asogi's incarceration, you see. What sort of conditions? Well, even though he was held in a cell designed for condemned inmates, he was allowed to keep his personal effects with him, with one exception. Really? He was allowed his things? That is unusual, certainly. Of course, he had been convicted of killing 5 members of the aristocracy, but at the same time, he was a guest in our countries from the Empire of Japan. The powers that we were be determined that his final day shouldn't be needlessly uncomfortable. And what was the exception you mentioned to the personal effects he was allowed? That's the point. He wasn't permitted to have writing materials, specifically no pens or papers. So, he was prevented from leaving any written record of what happened to him? Yes, that was the long and short of it. I have no idea where he obtained that paper. Someone must have gave it to him. Any writing materials would have been confiscated from him upon his conservation. Instead, he hid the paper behind his back, and then he pleaded with me. What did you just hide behind your back?
Please, please, turn a blind eye. This is my lifeline.
But, you know it's against the rules.
You're the only person who's seen, if you agree to keep quiet.
Alright then. But what's on that paper? I feel like this big window here doesn't really is an easy escape for the prisoner.
A last will and testament. This will is the only weapon I have now.
How can a will be a weapon? So I pretend I see nothing if I let him keep his will. But then later, it just seemed to vanish without a trace. Nani? What do you mean it vanished? It would seem it isn't the end of the story of his mysterious will. The will's disappearance. Where's the will? I was the only person who saw Sogi's will, but somehow it disappeared. Who's after Sogi's execution? Which was actually an elaborate jailbreak. The orders gathered up Asogi's possession that were in his cell. They're all to be sent back to his family home in Japan, you see. Poor Cosmo-sama. And you're saying that it wasn't anywhere to be found among his personal effects. The will, I mean. That's right, though I didn't search through them myself. But Governor Cade was livid. He was screaming, "Can I have disappeared completely?" That doesn't quite make sense, though, does it? In what way? Well, we understood that only Mr. Vigil was aware of the will's existence. In which case, how did the prisoner governor know to look for it? Oh yes, you're right, we need to talk to him. I really don't know how he knew. But it certainly seemed like he knew of the will's existence from the outset. Only he didn't refer to it as a will. What he said was... the Asogi papers. The Asogi papers. I really can't tell you anything of the subsequent events. Because, well, what happened? Your dismissal, and the way you blocked it all from your memory. I've forgotten all until this day. I don't suppose it's relevant to the case, though. Well, anyway, thank you very much for sharing it with us, Mr. Vigil. We're very grateful. Well, that's a good enough info, we guess. I'm afraid there's really little more I can tell you. My wife Evie will be here shortly, so I don't hope you appear rude, but... No, not at all. Thank you again. But what will become of you now? Well, impersonating a police officer is a criminal offense, of course. I imagine that once I'm fully recovered, I shall be arrested. Pepe hens. I'm so sorry. Oh, but your wife? Your wife? Don't be, please. It was all my undoing. I always knew that this day would come. Well, I wish you well. Goodbye, Mr. Vigil. Well... Ah! Before you go, there's just one thing. Oh, yes. What is it? The Asogi papers. Huh? I'd be very grateful if you make no mention of the things I told you about them. What? Presumably for good reason? It's my understanding that their very existence is a very closely guarded secret. It became known that I remember. Well, it could be rather troublesome, I think. I understand. Well, sort of will that Genshin Asogi penned just before his death. The man himself claimed that was his last weapon. I wonder, perhaps it had something to do with his plan to escape. If there's anyone who might know about this document about that Cosmo's father left behind, it would be Mr. Vigil, his governor. Then we know precisely where we must go, to Barclay Prison. Well, anyways, that was a great episode of info that we gotten, especially from Vigil. But next time on the Great Ace Attorney Chronicles, we're going to be continuing on with the investigation, hopefully going to Barclay Prison next. See you guys all next time.